At this particular time, there are an awful number of people who are suffering at the moment through the loss of a loved one. Throughout the world, there are many thousands of people in the early stages of grief, loss and bereavement. And there are even more thousands of people who are in fear of death or of losing a loved one. Fear of sickness, fear of this virus. And I would like, for the time being, to dedicate my YouTube channel to bringing some messages of hope to those who are in fear or in grief or bereavement. You know, I've been around a long time on this planet, and I've lost a lot of loved ones. I've got more relatives over there than I have over here. I've lost parents, grandparents, dearest friends, my late wife, and I know what grief feels like. I know what it is to lose one who you love. I've sat by the side of loved ones, my loved ones, as I've seen them pass away. I understand the grieving process, and I know that there is life, there is hope beyond what we think of as death and of grief. And I can think of no better place to try to share with you some messages and some hope than to recapture some of the messages that are written in this little book that I wrote some years ago after my wife died. And I'd like to start in this video by just actually sharing with you the process that I went through as she passed away, with a particular message that I have for you today, especially if you are one who has heard of one of your loved ones dying and have been unable, because of the current situation, to actually be at the bedside. And I want to bring a message of hope to you, that the one who is dying is in control of their process. And I know at the moment you may not feel that, you may not believe that, but just, I ask you at the moment, just believe that I believe that for now, and see if some of the things that I can share with you in these videos may help you to gain a more hopeful perspective on the apparent pain and suffering involved in losing a loved one. Because they're not really dead as we know dead to be. They really do live on, albeit in another level, another frequency of this universe, at a frequency too fine, too high for our physical eyes to be able to see. But they're not actually far from you. They are just a thought away. Let me take you back to the time and place where I experienced the loss in this case of my late wife. In the hospice room where she had been for a while, having got towards the last days of her life through breast cancer. And there in the hospice room, I had been spending time by her bedside, and the night before she died, I was there overnight in the hospice room, and as the day unfolded, she was, as she had been, still full of spirit, full of life. And after a while, my eldest daughter came to visit, and so she, Joanna, and I sat by the side of my wife, Jane. And at one point, Jane's breathing began to become very, very laboured. And the nurse who was there in the room with us at the time turned to me and said, "Is there someone you should call?" And at that point, Joanna, my daughter, and I realised this means she's dying. She is actually in the process of dying. We'd been so accustomed to her being unwell, struggling, suffering, and yet overcoming, that we still thought somehow something would happen to miraculously help her through this day. And it was a shock to my daughter and I at the realisation that she was actually close to death. Joanna and I looked at each other. She immediately got up, rushed out of the hospice room to go and telephone my son and my younger daughter to get them to the hospice as soon as possible, if not sooner. I learned later that the minute they received the call from Joanna, they jumped into a car, rushed through the traffic to get to the hospice. By now, back in the hospice room, Jane's breathing was heavy and terribly laboured. The nurse, Joanna, my daughter, and I were just sitting there, feeling helpless, holding Jane's hand and just staring at her. Suddenly, a silent voice within me seemed to say, "Help her. Remind her who she is." Within my mind, I suddenly felt, oh my goodness, what the heck are we doing? Just sitting here, staring at a dying body, when this soul, who we know of as Jane, is needing our help for her transition. I immediately reached for a devotional book that Jane and I had been studying every day together for a long time while she was in the hospice. And I opened the book, and the page I read out to her. I said, "Jane, if you can hear me, say these words to yourself. I am not weak. I am strong. I am not helpless, but all powerful. I am not limited, but unlimited. I am not doubtful. I am certain. As soon as I began to say those sentences, Jane stopped breathing in the laborious way that she had been breathing for the past hour. She took one last long, deep breath, and she was free. Her body was still functioning, but she was free. Joanna looked at me, stunned. The nurse had expected Jane to continue to labour for some time. She had left the room. But Jane had other ideas. And when she heard the truth about herself that resonated within her, her soul, was able to leave her physical body. At the precise moment that her body returned to functionality, but she had made a separation from it, the door flung open, and our son Jeremy, our younger daughter Louise, burst into the room. From Jane's standpoint, in her subtle body, her soul, if you like, obviously Jane could see them arriving, desperate to park the car, running up the stairs of the hospice, racing down the corridor towards her room. And then, obviously content that her children were with her physical body at the moment of her passing, she was able to simply watch us kiss her lifeless body, and she was free. Now, some of you who might be watching this video, because of the current situation in the world, may not have been able to be at the bedside of your loved one as they died. And you may be tormenting yourself, I was not able to be there with them when they passed. And this is the message today I want to bring to you. You may not have been able to be with them, but they were able to be with you. The soul, the essence, the real self is perfectly in control of the moment of the separation from the physical body. They leave before the physical body ceases its physical suffering. What the nurse sees, what people see in the last moments, are not actually what your loved one themselves are experiencing. They are free. They are dancing. A wise man said, dying is like taking off a tight shoe. In my next video, I'd like to continue to share with you what happened next and how I came to the point by direct experience where I ceased to believe in life after death and I began to know there is life after death for certain. Just like to finish today with a prayer, if you like, or an affirmation that I would like to offer you to say, particularly those of you who have recently lost a loved one. Speak to them in your heart. May you rest in peace, in fulfillment, in love. May you run straight home into God's embrace, into the freedom of wind and sunshine. We let you go. Into the dance of the stars and the planets. We let you go. Into the wind's breath and the hands of the star maker. We let you go. We love you. We miss you. We want you to be happy. Go safely. Go dancing. Go running home.